Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the theta meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, guys, and welcome to another Scientology Outside of the Church podcast, brought to you by Advanced Org of the Great Plains. That's us. I'm here with Arthur Moudakis. This is season 9, episode 1. And Arthur wanted to do a podcast on the concept of justification in independent Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard talks about justification a lot, along with overts, withholds, and the concept of motivators. So I'm going to hand it over to Arthur, and then we will kind of walk that red carpet into the concept of justification and what this has to do with the woof and warp of everybody's lives and the lives in corporate Scientology and independent Scientology. Every being has justifications for the things that they do. So Arthur, take it away.
All right. Well, in the last couple of days, I've had an experience that has really broken my heart, and it's really upset me with some people very close to me. And justification came to my mind, and I thought, you know what? Let's do justification. And the way it's linked into overt acts and withholds, I think is perfect to the situation that I just experienced. And so let's do this.
Yep.
So let's start out with when a person has committed an overt act and then withholds it, he or she usually employs the social mechanism of justification. We have all heard people attempt to justify their actions, and all of us have known instinctively that justification was tantamount to a confession of guilt. But not until now have we understood the exact mechanism behind justification. And this goes on for quite a bit. So what makes someone...
This is from the Justification HCOB bulletin, the technical bulletin, is that right?
Yep. So this is from Bulletin of the 21st of January, 1960.
Yeah. Continue.
Yep. I believe from Ron Hubbard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. It is. It's verified.
Just saying.
It was in the 75 volumes as well, which was before everything went south. So, yes.
Okay. So, where are we? Okay, so short of Scientology auditing, there was no means by which a person could relieve himself of consciousness of having done an overt act except to try to lessen the overt, hence the justification. Some churches use the mechanism of confession. This was a limited effort to relieve a person of the pressure of his overt acts. Later, the mechanism of confession was employed as a kind of blackmail by which increased contribution could be obtained from the person confessing. Factually, this is a limited mechanism to such an extent that it can be extremely dangerous. Religious confession does not carry with it any real stress of responsibility for the individual, but on the contrary, seeks to lay responsibility at the door of divinity. A sort of blasphemy in itself. I have no axe to grind here with religion. Religion as religion is fairly natural, but psychotherapy must be in itself a completed fact, or, as we all know it, can become a dangerous fact. That's why we flatten engrams and processes. Confession to be non-dangerous and effective must be accompanied by a full acceptance of responsibility. All overt acts are the product of irresponsibility on one or more of the dynamics. So this is just the overt act that, and the justification justifies the overt act. So withholds are a sort of overt act in themselves, but have a different source. Oddly enough, we have just proven conclusively that man is basically good. A fact which flies in the teeth of old religious beliefs that man is basically evil. And what's interesting about this, from my experience, I agree, This
Mm-hmm.
person is basically good.
Mm-hmm.
Man is good to such an extent that when he realizes he's being very dangerous and in error, he seeks to minimize his power. And if that doesn't work and he still finds himself committing overt acts, then he then seeks to dispose of himself either by leaving or by getting caught and executed, which is interesting.
Yeah, they put their own
Without this
overts in,
computation,
or they
yeah,
put their own
yeah,
ethics in because of their overts.
that's right. It's too much to handle. I just want out now. Without this computation, police would be powerless to detect crime. The criminal always assists himself to be caught, and that's true too.
Yeah,
Why police? Yeah, like the amount of criminals out there that end up confessing.
yeah,
That's it. It's done.
yeah. Even people that didn't do it confess to it because of their own overts in some other area that's similar to what it is that they're seeing, and they want to have their ethics put in because they can't put their own ethics in. I mean, you just see it all
Exactly.
the time, all the time.
Yeah. So why police punish the court criminal is the mystery. The court criminal wants to be rendered less harmful to the society and wants rehabilitation. Well, if this is a true, then why does he not unburden himself? Question mark. The fact is this: unburdening is considered by him to be an overt act. People withhold overt acts because they conceive that telling them would be another overt act.
Right, you're causing
It
an
is
effect they
as
can't easily have. They think.
That's right. It is as though Thetans were trying to absorb and hold out of sight all the evil of the world. And this is wrong headed. By withholding overt acts, these are kept afloat in the universe and are themselves, as withholds, entirely the cause of continued evil. And that's quite a really strong statement there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it puts it into the future in
Man,
perpetuity.
well, and it extends time as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this has everything to
Um,
do with withholds. This bulletin is part of L11.
that's right.
You
That's
know, I
right.
mean, this is one of the things that you use to get a person to, you're sort of stirring up the bottom of the fish tank on L11. Uh, this is
Yep.
very early on to get them to look at their justifications for things and everything like that, because it is the foundation of what is preventing them from reaching in life is their justifications. If
Mm,
you don't get the justification off in an overt or overt act, an overt act, for those that don't know, is a contra survival act, something somebody has done to you that they don't want done to them, or you've done to them that they don't want done to you, same as others to others, and most importantly, you to yourself. So you justify these
yep.
things, and that causes you to withhold from the universe and yourself and cuts your reach. And it is what prevents you from having the life you really want to have.
Well, what's a practical example of a withhold, overt act, and a justification?
Well, a practical example, I don't want to try and re-stimulate anyone, but if you did something to someone or a group after you had vowed allegiance to them, and then this has everything to do with the Scientology ethics conditions as well, because they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And LRH says betrayal is runs deep because of what's on OT3, because that was a huge betrayal. I mean, betrayal is betrayal, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
huge button for people that when they get betrayed, when they feel lied to,
Sure.
manipulated, and we talked about that in the last podcast. For anything to persist, there's a lie behind it. Well, that's this. So
Mm,
when you commit a harmful act and you withhold it, there's a lie that is persisting there. You're saying, I didn't
mm,
put my hand in the cookie jar when you did. That is an
mm,
alter is. And so an alter is
mm-hmm.
persists. And so
Yes.
the mother or the father is going to go, I don't know, Billy, that one, there might be something there. The other kids don't do that near as much. And Billy's justifier
Mm,
for putting his hand in the cookie jar is that They just don't understand how much I like cookies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be that
Yep.
simple. It can be that simple.
Yeah, that's right.
But when you get an overt off in session, you get the time, the place, the form, the event, all that stuff. You know, what was it? Where was it? When was it? Is that all of the overt? How did you justify it? You can spend 5-10 minutes on the justifications on a major overt because that's how
Yep.
they make it okay. And you know, it all comes down to a person is committing an overt because they can't have. That's what LRH says early on. It's a definition that's not in the technical dictionary. A person commits an overt because they can't have. Now, that's one might think when they hear that said, they can't have an object. Kid wants an apple, doesn't have any money, steals the apple from the apple cart, you know, from the street side vendor because he likes apples, and then he justifies it. Says, I was hungry. It looked good.
Yep.
He wouldn't notice that it was gone. These are all justifications.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
But if you don't get the justification off, it's, you know, it's really going to stay there because it isn't as is. It isn't something that can, how do I put it? It's just going to continue to persist. And these justifications stack up from one overt to the next, to the next, to the next. You get off all of the overts, then you as is the overt. But if you don't, you know, it's why was it okay for you to kill that person? Well, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's because they couldn't have them being around.
Yep. Yep.
That's a can't have. Yep. It's not just I couldn't possess something. They can't have it in their space.
Yeah.
That's the biggie. So, you know, I mean, you know, with your situation, what I mean, you know, what kind of an overt was that towards you?
It was A, very unexpected, and B, how do I explain it? I found it really offensive as well, in a sense. And, you know, there was clearly something there, and you know, it was just completely dismissed. You know, going from full ARC to no ARC within a handful of days. And it's just like, what's going on here? And not only that, it's left me quite confused, and it's also left me wondering what's actually happened.
Right. Well, and you know, the ethics conditions come up with what I believe it's either treason is betrayal after trust.
Yep.
That's an overt because you wouldn't want it done to you.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't look at that because they're looking at, well, you know, and this is something that you see with corporate Scientologists a lot. I've even seen it in the independent field, is that the master justification is, well, it was the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics.
Pretty much.
They just pave that over and over, you know, with 10 feet of concrete, and it's like, well, okay, we move on.
Yep.
and LRH even has a list of justifications that people use, and it's hilarious. It's a bullet. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, we see it even socially, don't we? The justifications for moving towards a certain agenda are created for us. You know, these days we don't even need to think of our own justifications to work towards a certain agenda, because somebody's already created those justifications for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're against, and I hate to say it, but if you're against LGBTQT, then you must be homophobic. The justification is there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well,
it's already created for you.
Yeah. Aberration.
Yeah.
Aberration. Any aberration begets aberration, and that's what justification is it itself is an indication of aberration. when somebody's trying
Yep.
to justify something. This
Yep.
isn't, I mean, when's the last time you saw somebody say on the nightly news and their justification for the act was, this
Yeah,
isn't
that's
this
right. Exactly.
this isn't something that is brought out into the sunlight for any amount of money or anything like that, because they do not want to get there. People can't confront on this planet. They cannot confront the overt act. I mean, what is the justification for, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to get political, and I'm not taking sides. What is the justification for kicking out other living human beings who may have a different religious viewpoint than your own? The amount of justifications, the headline the other day was that they killed 90 Palestinians looking for the military head of the Palestinian army that's driving
Yep.
this thing. And it's perfectly, it's just a heading, 90 people killed. We're not sure if we got them or not. 90 people killed, and everybody just goes, hey, what do you want for lunch?
Yeah.
Subway
Yes.
sounds good. And off they go. And you just go, this
Yep.
is insanity. The justifications
It is.
for these things.
It is.
And if you look at all of the stuff that's going on in the world today, without, I don't want to make this whole a political thing, but I mean, you have to look at this on the third and fourth dynamic and how easily people justify their actions. It is so blithely done, and they just move on and they just keep going. And then they wonder why they end up, next lifetime being a poodle that pisses on people's legs and next a grain of sand on a beach, because they've
Yep.
gotten into such a withhold on all their dynamics that they can't be anything. And
That's right.
That's the gruesome truth of it.
I remember when you and I, when I was learning about withholds and overt acts, and it wasn't until you grilled me quite a bit that the justification part came in. And I remember you gave me homework where it was like, write down your withholds and your overt acts. And then you said, but make sure you write down your justification for your withholds.
Yep.
Write down all the justifications.
Yeah.
And at first I'm like, excuse my French, but what the fuck are you talking about? I had every reason to do the acts I did. And you're like, well, write down the justifications. And the funny thing about that was, thinking about some of the justifications for my actions, I'm just like, wow, that's actually really stupid and really weak. There's no confront there at all.
No confront whatsoever.
At all.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just
no responsibility.
Yep. You're just paving the over and over and going, it didn't happen.
I gave myself the perfect reasons to treat someone like shit.
Yeah.
The perfect reasons. I justified it to myself so well, even I couldn't even see my own withhold.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how this whole thing goes, is it's justified.
Yep.
And I mean, at the end of the day, Ellerate says in the Dianetic Axioms, the early 1948 Dianetic Axioms in Dianetic's original thesis, the main intent is survival for a being.
Yep.
And then it goes from there.
That's true.
Well, I have to survive, and you get in these catch-22s. Catch-22 for anybody that's young. It was a movie and it was remade, and a catch-22 is you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Basically, it's an irony it's an irony, and it's a weird duality in the physical universe that no matter what you do, you're fucked.
Yep.
And that's the physical universe, and that's why Hubbard wrote the axioms, and that's why Scientology does what it does, and that's why we're doing this podcast on justifications. You don't have to justify a pro-survival act. So people think, well, it's pro-survival, and it's a justification because, well, it's pro-survival. Get the catch-22?
Well, and anytime you find yourself justifying your position, what's your withhold?
Right. Exactly.
If I'm living in a world where I need to justify my position, then I'm either lying to someone else or I'm lying to myself.
That's right. And at the end of it all, the only reason you need Dianetics and Scientology is what you just said. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I hate to break it to people, but that's what it comes down to. That is the
Yep.
end result. And you have lost track of all of the lies you've told yourself. And in that is these justifications. Period.
Yep.
And you don't
Yep.
want to look at it. You'd rather pave it over and go, well, they deserved it. They pulled that
Yeah,
in after
that's right.
what they did to me. They brought it on themselves and manufactured this whole thing, and then
We could go as simple as say homeless people. You see homeless people on the street, and the common justification is don't give them money because they're just going to spend it on drugs.
yeah,
Now, I don't
yeah,
know about everybody else, but they ended up there somehow.
yeah. It was a
Somehow, something happened
yeah.
for them to end up in that position.
Hmm.
And the justifications around not helping them, giving them a shit time on top of their shit time,
Hmm.
mind you.
Yeah, yeah. You just
Um,
pile it on.
it, yeah, it's like, isn't it obvious that something's happened for them to end up in that way?
Yeah.
Like, isn't it obvious?
Well, right.
Like,
Yeah.
sure, it may have been drugs, but what drew them to the drugs?
Right.
What drew them to
Right.
that position?
Right. What
What's
and
actually gone on here?
yeah, and that's why Hubbard said in 1960, 10 years after Dianetics was published, that Dianetics works so well because everybody can be a victim. What's happened to you?
Yes, yes,
When you ask a person,
yep.
find an instance that you can comfortably face. So we're looking for the easiest thing that you can take any responsibility for, but it's far easier to take responsibility for something that happened to you than you did. So you're the victim.
Yeah,
That's why
yep.
Dianetics works so well. And in fact, the
Mm,
entire Dianetics and Scientology bridge up into uh, I'm not even going to say OT8 because the church doesn't have the original OT8. We don't have the original OT8. Excalibur is the closest thing we've got, in my opinion. That came from
mm.
the Bill Robertson and Ron Zorg, and I'm not a pro or anti Ron Zorg. I'm just saying, having done it, you're still operating as a victim there. But the point is, to get back to the subject, is anybody can be a victim until you get them to a point to where they start to take responsibility and they stop justifying the things that they've done, because the things that
Yeah,
they've done cause them to put their own ethics in, and that's called a
yes,
motivator. They pull in a motivator, and people say,
yep.
well, how can a person pull in a motivator? Here's the deal: whether you like it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, a motivator is something you create in the physical universe as a being to have happen to you to put your own ethics in because you knew you did something you shouldn't have been doing. We are all
Mm,
gods in that respect. Good, bad, or indifferent. Whatever you cause
mm,
happens to you. And you eventually spot that. But in the meantime,
mm,
you justify away all of these things, and then you put your ethics in, and you wonder, why am I on the street begging for money and, taking that money and doing more drugs? Well, that's the reason for it, is you've got this stuff justified. Now, I get it when somebody says, well, what if they had a bad education? What if their mom and dad dropped them on their head? What if? We even had people that say, that Scientology just turns everybody into, they're destroying themselves. It's like,
mm.
okay, that might be one way to look at it, but you're justifying the things that you do because of the things that are done to you. And the only way to clean that up
Yep.
is get rid of the justifications for the things that you've done and take responsibility for it. Responsibility is a bitch. Yes, it is. But
Yeah.
until you do
Yep.
that, you will keep justifying things and you will not be happy in life. You can't look at that way. You have to take
Well,
responsibility for it.
your justifications will become a part of your flesh body.
Yeah.
Your body will actually become your justifications.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Your body will actually shape itself to your justifications.
Yeah. And that's why people are sick and they need
Physically.
Dianetics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like imagine you start with one justification when you're really young. And then as a grown adult, man, how many justifications have you justified your justification with? That original justification now all of a sudden has, hundreds of justifications on top of it. And like you say, keeping you in victim position.
Mm-hmm. Right. You're
You're
holding yourself
actually
in victim position.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're perpetuating your own
No
victimization.
responsibility. Yep. No responsibility. Constant overt acts as simple as blaming life for your position.
That's right. That's right. Whatever it is, whether it's the LGBTQ thing, whether it's,
whatever,
you have this sickness, whether it is, why don't I have any money?
whatever.
Whatever. It doesn't
The list
matter.
goes on.
Yeah.
The list is infinite.
Right.
It
right.
never ends.
You can be whatever you want to be, but if you're not happy being whatever it is that you want to be, you might want to take a look at that. And anybody says, well, they're anti-LGBTQ. No, are you happy? Are you surviving well? If that's the case, hey, keep doing what you're doing, and don't listen to podcasts that offend you, because you shouldn't get offended if you don't have anything that you've justified. And I just said that. Yes, I just said that.
Yep, that's right. That's right, and it's so true. It's so true, because to somebody who has a stacked amount of justifications, maybe they didn't start out as victim initially, but those justifications will make them victim in the end, all the way.
Yeah.
And that hole of justifications just gets deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're so far stuck in this hole with all your justifications of how shit life is, how shit people are, how shit the government is, how shit this is, how everything in your life is just shit.
Yeah, you could enter into it very simply with the question, if you were to just write down your overts that you justified, the question could be, what have you done in order to survive that you wouldn't want done to yourself?
Whoa, calm down, John. You mean take some kind of responsibility?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
You can imagine how I just missed everybody's withhold listening to this podcast, whether they've had auditing or not. Well, I had to survive. Well, okay, what is that? That is the justification of all justifications of a thetan in a body in the physical universe. And I'm not trying to
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it.
and that's the thing is, well, I've got to survive. Well, I had to take the food out of that baby's mouth because, well, I'm an adult and I need to survive and I need to protect the baby. So, I come first. It's they all end up being like that.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah. My pile of money, my piece of land, my this, and again, you come back to what Ella Rate says, what the definition of an overt is that the being can't have something. Because if they could have, if they can't have money, then they don't have money. So they commit an overt in order to try and survive. And then they put their own ethics in and justify it under the guise of survival. I mean, that's the blanket thing. That's the over, or how do you put it? It's the arc of all arcs. The ultimate arc is, I had to survive. What is Israel saying to Palestine? Well, you guys are, we got to survive.
We've just got a collateral damage. Isn't that what they call it? Collateral damage?
Right. It's collateral damage. Yeah. I mean, you break it down to everyday people and one businessman to the other. It's just business. It's just business.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, don't you?
Right, exactly. See, that's a justification. That's a justification.
it is what it is, John. It is what it is.
Yeah, right. And you just have to look at that when you see somebody criticizing somebody else, like he says in the State of Man Congresses, why people don't like you. When you hear somebody being critical of somebody else, 9 times out of 10, because it isn't criticism, he says in Science or Survival, if it's true, but people use that.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. People use that as a justification as well. Well, it's true, so I'm not being critical.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And I mean, it just goes on and on. It's like an endless feedback loop where they just keep doing this. But the thing is if somebody's critical of you, what do you know? They're trying to minimize their overts against you, and that criticism is their justifications for committing the act or acts against you. Or if you're critical of yourself, even more importantly, you've committed overts against yourself. Those are the worst. Those are the worst because when you commit an overt act against somebody else, you're committing an overt act against your own self, your own integrity. You're violating
going against your own ethics.
Yeah, you're going against your own ethics in the name of, well, I had to survive. It's just business.
Yep.
It's a business of survival. So you got to be, it's a slippery slope and you got to be careful.
It is. And what was interesting about my particular situation, which I may discuss down the track, but I found myself justifying my position. And then once I realized when I was confronting the situation that I started justifying my position, I turned it off straight away. I'm like, what's wrong with you, dude? You don't need to justify shit to anyone.
Right.
You know, and then my whole dynamic changed from then. It was just like, why am I justifying myself? I don't need to justify myself.
Right.
I know who I am.
Yeah, what's true for you is true for you, you know, and that's part of the code of honor is well, as long as you're operating off of factual data and you go, okay, well, this and you're not, I mean, you know, you're not lying to yourself about whatever the situation is or situations are, and you look at, well, I understand the situation, and this kind of builds up over the last couple of podcasts that we've done, to be honest. You know, because you have to be able to investigate, have the correct data, operate off of the correct data, all this stuff. And then if you have that, then there is no need to justify anything, because you are really doing the right thing for yourself in all of your dynamics. And yes, the greatest good for the greatest number of dynamics is important, but you really have to have a good head on your shoulders to be able to look at something and go, what's the greatest good for the greatest number? I mean, you know, I don't understand why any of my peers out in the field who are trained auditors, who are class 6s, class 8s, class 12s. I mean, you look at all the class 12s that have left the church, there's only one that has been overt enough to declare, you know, I'm a class 12 and putting it out there and everything. Where are all these other auditors that I got trained with? Where are all the other auditors before? Where are all the other auditors since? Why aren't they out there doing the same thing that we're doing? You know why? Justification.
Why is that?
Justifications. And that's how powerful.
What if?
Right. They've cut their reach. Yeah, in my estimation, and maybe I'm just a hard ass. My estimation is you got no excuse. You know this stuff works. And I'm not condemning anybody by saying this, but you've got no excuse whatsoever. You know this stuff works. You know the data. You were trained. You've got lots of results with people, and now you're doing nothing with it. That to me is a huge overt. Now, you know, granted, you know, I'm a holy roller, but I mean, come on, you know, it's just like these guys that, well, they go out and they figure out how to get free energy and everything, and they're completely overt about it, and then they end up dead. I mean, you take some balls to do that sort of thing. But the thing is their viewpoint is everybody needs this technology. Where are my people?
Yeah.
Where are my people? Who has the confront to stand up to a completely corrupt entity, the corporate Church of Scientology? And it, like we were talking about before the podcast, is they're saying that they're tomato juice, but they're actually milk. But they assert that they're
Mm-hmm.
tomato juice. They're not the same thing, you know. They are a drink, but that's where all of the similarities end, and people just buy it hook, line, and sinker because of the beautiful buildings, because of all the fancy advertising, the fancy Scientology TV channel, and all of this stuff, and
Yep.
you're just sheep if you don't look at things for yourself, like you said. Once you have the information, how in the world could you do anything else? But the thing is the information
Yeah.
isn't very readily available. It takes a lot to do these types of podcasts. It takes a lot to hold a position in space and say, I know what I'm doing is right. Now, I took the long way around
Yep.
on that, but that's what you're saying. You don't have to justify a goddamn thing.
That's right. That's right. And, even like we were saying before we did the podcast, when I asked for the bridge the other day around the purification that I'm
Mm-hmm.
about to embark on,
Mm-hmm.
one side of the fence says, oh, no, 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 you need to do it this way. It's going to cost you all this money. And then on the other side of the fence, I'm like, well, you know, the data says there's no processing with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's no after processing that comes with it. It's just part of one phase, which will lead you to the next phase on the bridge.
Yeah.
And that's what I asked you for the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And 1980, Ron Hubbard's still alive. You know,
Mm-hmm.
are you telling me that he released a bridge without reviewing it, where this process that I'm being told I should be taking does
Mm-hmm.
not exist?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the justifications for changing all of that. Like, give me a break.
Well, and it's a good point
Give
that
me
you
a
mentioned
break.
that, because we were talking about that too right before we started, as far as what the
Yeah.
church said about, well, that the typist was suppressive, and they deleted things and they add
Yeah.
things, and that's why the books were altered. Okay, let's look at that from
Yep.
that's a justification, and
Isn't it?
a justification is another word for a lie.
Sure. If it's used that way, definitely.
I mean, it's well, we were justified in our actions.
Mm.
We had to shoot him because he was coming towards us.
Yes.
We thought he had a gun.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
We
Yeah.
thought he had a gun. You know,
Yep.
that's a
Yep. Hey,
justification.
when in danger, you got to do what you got to do, John.
Right. But see, this is what I'm talking about. Well, it was justified that we reissue all of these things, but the thing is people, organizations, they use justifications as window dressing to, well, like Goebbels said in the Second World War, a Nazi said, if you repeat a lie often enough, people will believe it. So you get people to buy
Yep.
into your justifications.
100%.
It's the best
100%.
thing for you. We know best
Yep.
for you. We are the authority.
Yep.
We are the
Yep.
authority. We are the authority. We are the authority. And people soon believe it. And this falls right into your situation that we've been talking about. We are the
Mm.
authority. We are the authority. Look at all our beautiful stuff. We are the authority.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
the justification. That's
It's
a
like I said
justification
to
in and
you,
of itself.
is Judas trading someone in for, a purse full of coins?
Yeah, they'll find out. They'll find out what they're
Like, no
dealing
matter
with.
how much this person, Judah dobbed in, loved him and
Yeah,
cared for him and did all these things.
right. And the
Like,
betrayal runs deep in a justification, because at the end of the day, the deepest betrayal is the fact that you lied to yourself with the justification in the first place.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
And
pretty
that's why it
full on.
holds us back. It
Yeah,
is. So,
yeah. So,
any
I
other,
don't know if
did you
there's
want to
much more
finish
we
with
can
what
add
you
to
were
that.
reading? Yeah, you were. Is there anything, did you want
All
to
right,
finish
yeah,
anything in
let's
this? Because
continue.
I
Right.
interrupted, and I'm sorry, we got off on a tangent
No,
there.
that's all right. Okay, where is it? That's all right, which we quite often do. And that's the whole idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, where was I?
It was
this one.
by
Okay.
withholding overt acts, these are kept afloat in the universe and are themselves, as withholds, entirely the cause of continued evil. Man is basically good, but he could not attain expression of this until now. Nobody but the individual could die for his own sins. To arrange things otherwise was to keep man in chains. I mean, that really puts it right there, is that you are your own judge, jury, and hangman.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And that's at the
Okay.
bottom of
So,
page 284 and the
yep.
top of 285 there.
Okay. So, in view of these mechanisms, when the burden became too great, man was driven to another mechanism, the effort to lessen the size and pressure of the overt. He or she could only do this by attempting to reduce the size and repute of the terminal. Hence, not isness. Hence, when a man or woman has done an overt act, there usually follows an effort to reduce the goodness or importance of the target of the overt. Hence, the husband who betrays his wife must then state that the wife was no good in some way. Thus, the wife who betrayed her husband had to reduce the husband to reduce the overt. This works on all dynamics. In this light, most criticism is justification of having done an overt. There's a lot in that.
There is.
This
It's true.
This does not say that all things are right and that no criticism anywhere is ever merited. Man is not happy. He is faced with total destruction unless we toughen up our postulates. And the overt act mechanism is simply a sordid game condition man has slipped into without knowing where he was going. So there are righteousness and wrongnesses in conduct and society and life at large. But random carping, one-to-one criticism, when not borne out in fact, is only an effort to reduce the size of the target of the overt so that one can live, in brackets he hopes, with the overt. Of course, to criticize unjustly and lower repute is itself an overt act, and so this mechanism is not, in fact, workable.
Right, you're committing
So
another overt
don't
on top
justify
of
your, don't add to your original justification.
Right.
Here we have the source of the dwindling spiral. One commits overt acts unwittingly, which is fair enough. I think a lot of people innocently can create an overt act without knowing any better.
Yeah. Physical universe is a harsh mistress.
Oh, yeah, that is true. He seeks to justify them by finding fault or displacing blame. This leads him into further overts against the same terminals, which leads to a degradation of himself and sometimes those terminals. Yeah, interesting. Scientologists have been completely right in objecting to the idea of punishment. Punishment is just another worsening of the overt sequence and degrades the punisher. But people who are guilty of overts demand punishment. That's an interesting statement too.
Mm-hmm.
They use it to help restrain themselves from, they hope, further violation of the dynamics. It is the victim who demands punishment, and it is a wrong-headed society that awards it. People get right down and beg to be executed, and when you don't oblige, the woman scorned is sweet-tempered by comparison. I ought to know. I have more people try to elect me an executioner than you would care to examine. And many a pre-clear who sits down in your PC chair for a session is there just to be executed. And when you insist on making such a PC better, why, you've had it. For they start on this desire for execution as a new overt chain and seek to justify it by telling people you're a bad auditor. And how true is all of that?
Right.
I think we've all been there to some degree.
Yeah, those beings do themselves in when they know that they've been harmful to their dynamics.
Yeah. When you hear scathing and brutal criticism of someone, which sounds just a bit strained, know that you have your eye on overts against that criticized person. And next chance you get to pull the overts and remove just that much evil from the world. And remember, by the by, that if you make your PC write these overts and withholds down and sign them and send them off to me, he'll be less reluctant to hold on to the shreds of them. It makes for a further blow of overts and less blow of PC. And always run responsibility on a PC when he unloads a lot of overts or just one. And we have our hands here on the mechanism that makes this a crazy universe. So let's just go for broke on it and play it all the way out. L. Ron Hubbard, the founder.
Yep. Yep. It's very, very plainly put. Now there's another reference. This is from the one we just read, is the Justification bulletin, technical bulletin. The other one, this was published in '64, 4 years later, and it's more of a technical bulletin than the other technical bulletin. But let's see here. There was one thing in here I wanted to read real quick. He says here, if you ask a pre-clear what overt he has committed, and then ask him why it wasn't an overt, you will find that it wasn't an overt and therefore didn't relieve as an answer because it was all justified. That's why it's so important to get justifications off, is it doesn't go away unless they do get the justifications off, because that's the alteration that's holding things in place. He says this cracks the general irresponsibility the auditor is met with in trying to get overts and withholds off. And the actual process is this is the as basic as it gets and as strong as it gets. The auditing process is, in this lifetime, what overt have you committed? How have you justified it? So you ask the first question, and then the second question is run flat until they can't get off any more justifications. Then a new overt is found and is done thoroughly and repetitively on it. So you get the overt, get all of the justifications. Get a new overt, get all the justifications. So, and this is interesting because I've seen this in session. He says, in this lifetime is added to the beginning of the question because the PC who can't face his overts not only justifies them, but goes way back into his past lives to find overts instead of getting off the simple ones in this lifetime. Because it's easier to come up with that stuff than it is to confront what's going on right now. And it all comes down to, we see it all the time in the podcast, a lack of confront. Mic drop. Boom. But you can't get somebody to just confront everything all at once. It's a very gradient approach, and that's what auditing does. And this is interesting. He says, however, in simple general overt withhold, in an overt withhold auditing process, you will find the PC is not answering the auditing question, but is answering, this is important, what have I done that caused my trouble? The PC is running, what action that I have done explains what has happened to me. Remember that victim thing we were talking about earlier with Dynetics? What action that I have done explains what has happened to me. That's the question they're answering instead of actually confronting, what have I done that caused my trouble? Boom. And that's where justifications come in. Then he says, therefore, running justifications off is a further south process than any earlier version of overt withhold processing, and is very effective in raising the cause level of the PC. This is the thing. This is what you're trying to do with auditing, is raise their awareness, raise their causality for themselves across all dynamics. So it is the underpinning of the insanity on this planet. Justification. Why is it okay?
Well, and it's interesting because even this line here, this is not the same process as playing "What have you done?"
Yeah, what have you done?
Instead of saying "What have you done?"
Right.
What are your justifications for what you did?
Right.
It's a very different angle, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is 4
very
years
different
later.
Angle.
Yeah, this is 4 years later because he saw that people were worming their way out of it with General OW and not getting any better. So you ask him, in this lifetime, what overt have you committed? Okay, thank you. I killed chickens by the millions. All right, how'd you justify it? How'd you justify killing chickens by the millions? Well, they were sick and we needed to eat, and we just go from there on that as far as the justifications. Well, and I'm not taking sides here. You just say, what you ask one country's leader, why did you do what you did to whatever country? In this
Yep.
lifetime, what
Yep.
overt have you committed on, whatever the country's name is, put country name
Yep.
here. Okay. And then how have you justified it?
Yep.
you know?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of reasons people have, is hidden by this word, my reasoning is,
Yeah.
as opposed to my justification is,
Right. Reasoning.
which is what's really being said, isn't it?
Yeah. Reasoning.
Well, the reason I killed those millions of chickens, is because, as you said, they were diseased. That's not my justification. That's my reason.
Right. So that makes it all okay. but turning it into a reason is in fact a justification in and of itself.
Isn't it? Actually, I'm just going to look up this word reason because
reason.
I'm pretty sure it means something a little different. Oh, well, here we go. First definition: a cause, explanation, or justification for an action or event. There you go. The power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments logically.
Right. Now, let me take this a step further real quick. I'm sorry to interject, but LRH says that
That's all right.
Ethics is reason. Ethics is reason. Now, what is that?
So that would be the second definition, yeah? The power of the mind to think, understand, and form judgments logically.
Judgments.
Not irrationally, logically. Well, to judge something is, it's one thing judging a person objectively, and it's another thing using judgment for your safety, for your security.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it safe to eat this?
It isn't. Again, like we were talking about earlier with catch-22s and that type of a thing. Sometimes the decisions that a being or an organization has to make aren't necessarily comfortable decisions.
Yep.
Aren't necessarily comfortable decisions. If a business is to stay afloat and they have to let people go, they say, well, we're having to cut costs and things like that. But there are some businesses out there who aren't, and I'm just giving you as an example. That's, that would be a justification. We got to let people go because we're not making enough money, cutting you loose by, and you're all, good luck with that. And then there are businesses that let people go and they give them a severance package because that's the right thing to do. Yes, it costs the company more money and it puts them behind and they don't have as much money in their bank account. That is reason. That is reason. That's the difference between justification and reason. Is it may be uncomfortable and it might set the company back. And yes, they're letting these people go, but they're giving them a severance package because they know it's the right thing to do. And that is the thing that you see that is the rarest on this planet, is doing the right thing may be uncomfortable. It may set you back, and you're already set back because they were there to begin with. But the thing is you've got to do what's right for those people and keep your own integrity in.
Well, if we move to the word reasonable, having sound judgment, fair and sensible, as much as is appropriate or fair, moderate.
Yeah.
Is a reasonable act.
Yeah. Right. But LRH talks about reasonability too, where people are like, well, it's, we had to do what we had to do. And you get reasonable and let your guard down and you don't keep your standards in, and then you're screwed. That's the opposite side of that. Because it is a very, very narrow tightrope that you have to walk in order to have reason. And reason is ethics. What do you have to do? I mean, I'll give you an example. Here's an example that happened over the weekend, and it was a busy weekend. Alec Baldwin was on trial for involuntary manslaughter for shooting this woman that was on the set working on the production of the movie Rust. And it was found that the district attorney had bullets in an envelope that wasn't given for discovery to Alec Baldwin's attorneys, because that's what discovery is you're trying to find all this stuff out before you go to trial. And she failed to reveal it. And it wasn't the fact that the bullets were actually on the set or anything like that, but they were for that gun, and she didn't reveal it. And the judge said, throwing out the case. That's reason. That's reason, because she saw, if that's happening, what else has happened?
Yep.
Boom.
Yep.
That's fair. And this turned this guy's life upside down. He was an executive producer on the whole thing. This woman died. How did these bullets get on the set? And fairly enough, even the woman that was the prop handler for these guns, who is now in jail for 18 months for involuntary manslaughter, her attorney is also going to try and have the case overturned because it was the same district attorney. You see what I mean? That's principle. Justice does exist, but justice only comes in where ethics isn't able to be applied. So, all of these things go hand in hand: justifiers, overts, withholds, motivators, ethics, reasonability, and justice. You look at the word justification. What's the root word? Justice. Look at that. What does that say? I mean, you look at the word justification and justice. Aren't there what? It was just. Just is really the root word. Isn't that something?
Is it just?
Is it just?
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Just like that.
When you break these things down, it's incredible at how much it can undo.
Right. You can unwind that Gordian knot really, really easily. There was no justification for live rounds to be in a prop gun. And the prop gun was a real gun that actually worked and could fire a live round, as an example. How in the fuck did that happen? How was that allowed to happen? Checks and balances and all this stuff. I mean, that where a child is without a mother because of this. And
that's right.
You look at these things and you go, these things happen, and trying to unwind it and explain it and all of this stuff. But people's lives hang in the balance on this. People they were all artists. All of these people were artists. And it's just crazy that these sorts of things happen, but it all comes down to an overt act, a withhold, a justification, all of this in that particular scenario. And at the bottom of it, misunderstood concept, word, or symbol. Hubbard came up with this stuff. Just amazing. It's such
it is pretty incredible.
A powerful thing that if you understand it, you could unwind that whole situation if you wanted with this technology. Now, I know Alec Baldwin doesn't think highly of Scientology at all. I've heard what he's had to say and everything like that. But, at the end of the day, I would look at it and go, so, Alec, what was it that caused this whole thing to be pulled in? What was going on there? And, it may be innocent. And it could be unwound. And I think that he's found justice, and I'm very happy for him and his family. Will this all suss out? I don't know. But that's the thing is it's just an example of everybody's lives. Will it all come clear? The only way it'll come clear is if you get your justifications on.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
We'll just put this out on the internet here, and maybe those people you had issue with might hear this podcast and think twice about what it is that they're justifying in the way that they've treated people.
Probably not, but you never know.
But you never know. Time will tell. Thetans have a way of putting their own ethics in. So
don't they just?
Anyway, this has been fun, and we will be back with another podcast on Friday, time permitting for both you and I, and hope to do another one. I really enjoyed this, and I hope it was an eye-opener.
Yeah, it's good fun.
And these references are in the technical volumes on our website in the multimedia section. You can view them and have a conversation with them with our AI now. I just put that up just to advertise that, and you can go in and talk to the technical volumes and ask questions, and it's really cool. So I finally was able to do that outside of the Oracle that we have for our students and pre-clears who are doing services. It's a free service of AOGP. So until next time, for Arthur Moudakis and myself, namaste, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.